All right, on today's notes, which are, I believe, are going to be actually video only. You will not see this in class no matter what, unlike some of the others which are used as a supplement. This one's going to be a video only, an exclusive, a YouTube exclusive even, by God. We're going to look at something called informal norms of Congress, also sometimes referred to as the unwritten rules of Congress. So, if you're a part of any on-campus organization of any size or scope, well, then chances are the organization you're a part of has some informal norm. Maybe it's something as simple as on the team of the sport, the seniors have first priority on uniform numbers, so some hotshot sophomore linebacker can't go to a senior all-CIF guy and say, well, I've always worn number 15, so I'm taking number 15. That ain't how it's going to work, right? Or maybe it's something like one we used to have. When I was coaching in track, before head coach, I was an assistant coach in the hurdles. Our informal norm in our unit was freshmen get out the gear. Get out the blocks, get out the hurdles, set them up. Actually, it wasn't freshmen to be exact. It was rookies. So if you were a sophomore and it was your first year in the program, you were just like the freshmen. You had to earn your stripes, so to speak. And so that became the informal norm. That became the unwritten rule. And others have different ones as well. A lot of them having to deal with sort of the proper order of things and deference to people who are more experienced or deference to people who've done it a bit longer. So in Congress, there are a handful of informal norms that govern some of the behavior of the members of Congress. Now, they're nowhere in the Constitution. You can read the Constitution cover to cover, and by now you probably already should have. You won't find them. You can go look at statutory law of the federal government. You won't find it there either. But every congressman's quickly made aware of these informal norms, these unwritten rules. And until very recently, these were three norms that were very well followed. In fact, just to show you, to demonstrate to you how much things do over time tend to change, when I began teaching AP government about 20 years ago, before any of you were even born, when I taught this particular part of Congress, the sort of predominant theme was that these are the informal norms that no one dare violate. Well, here we are, it's 20 years later. The first informal norm is effectively gone. The second one is in a far weaker position than it was 20 years ago. And the third one really is the only one that endures for reasons you'll see as we go along. So let's start with the dearly departed informal norm, which is something called institutional loyalty. The norm of institutional loyalty is based on a really simple premise, and that is the assumption, going from a set of notes we've already done, that everybody hates Congress. You saw the poll numbers. Approval ratings in the teens, the low 20s. If everything's going right, maybe 30%. So, to improve the image of Congress, the norm of institutional loyalty dictated that members of Congress behave professionally at all times. Treat the chambers and one another with a certain level of respect. Now, we still do see vestiges of this to this day. You will see, for example, in formal House debate on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, they will still refer to themselves not by first name and not even by last name solely, but rather as, and I'm quoting here, of course, the distinguished gentlewoman from California, Ms. Porter, or the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cardin, or whatever. And those are actually two people, Katie Porter and I believe it's John Cardin. And the reason I say I believe is because his his uncle's a senator, and his name I believe is Ben, if I remember correctly. But anyhow, point is that stilted language is to keep an air of formality and an air of mutual respect in the formal proceedings of the legislature. Well, it used to be that it extended far beyond that. Members were expected, and those use of the past tense, they were expected, because like I said, this informal norm has has taken a monstrous beating over the last 20 years. They're expected not to criticize personally their fellow members. That was seen as a great breach of etiquette. And I'll give you a real-life example from when I was in college. I think it was about 1995. It was right after the Republicans had taken control of Congress for the first time in 40 years. So mind you, this had not happened in 2 generations. And one of the Democrats who had been there since the 1960s, his name was David Obey. David Obey was a congressman from Wisconsin. He went to the floor. At the end of every day of House proceedings, there's something that are called 1-minute speeches. They don't have to actually be a minute, but the purpose of the 1-minute speech is an opportunity to get on the congressional record a short statement of some description. A lot of times, these 1-minute addresses at the end of the day are things like, we, the people of the Maryland 3rd Congressional District, congratulate Edna Mae Simmons for her retirement after 54 years of teaching in Baltimore City schools. What a tremendous achievement. What a tremendous lady. Yay, Edna. And it's on the congressional record, which is pretty damn cool, right? So that's usually what these short addresses at the end of the day are for. Well, Obey, one day in the first year of the Republican control of Congress, so this would have been 1995 now that I think about it, uses his short address. First of all, it wasn't that short. It went long. I want to say it was 5 to 10 minutes to absolutely rip the new management of Congress and how he felt the Republicans were abusing their power and so forth and so on. It was scathing. It was not kind, to say the least. So as Obey's leaving the House, going back to his office, they're actually in public. They're in Statutory Hall, which if you've been to, or Statuary Hall, statutory is a different thing entirely. They're in Statuary Hall, which is one of the most public parts of the Capitol. It's where a lot of the tourists are. And Obey's confronted by a guy named Tom DeLay. Tom DeLay was the majority whip at the time, so he was one of the leaders of the Republican majority in the House. And Tom DeLay was not a disciple of Gandhi. He was one of those guys that woke up in the morning pissed off. And he makes a beeline right for Obey and says, what was that? And Obey basically gets kind of blustery and says, well, I felt the public needed to know what you guys are doing here, and da-da-da-da. Again, Obey had been there for, at that point, almost 30 years. DeLay grabs him by the jacket, like by the lapel, and says, you're a gutless chicken shit, and shoves him. Not like shoves him to start a fight, but just kind of pushes him off, right? You could have... The best analogy I can give. Remember the first time your parent heard you swear, heard you use profanity? And that kind of shocked expression? Unless you were really little, and then it's kind of cute, and your parent probably laughed, which is a huge mistake. Parenting error, don't do it. But that's how the entirety of Congress responded to the breaking of the news that this exchange had taken place. Kind of a collective, oh my, kind of thing, right? So believe it or not, in the middle of 1995, leaders of the Republican and Democratic leadership in the Congress, of which both Obey and DeLay were part of, held what they called a civility retreat in Hershey, Pennsylvania, actually. Maybe they just ate some chocolate, had some s'mores, chilled out, and talked about how to be nicer to each other, but they felt the need to do that because institutional loyalty at that time and in that place was still a big deal. Would that happen today? No, it wouldn't happen at all. Because over the last generation, this norm's taken a beating. I'd go further than that. This norm is effectively, in my opinion, dead. Now, trying to assign blame for this is a little difficult, but there are some things. The polarized environment created by cable television and the internet is certainly a big part of it. You could become a big celebrity. You can go viral, to use the phrase that those darn kids use, by being, pardon my expression, by being an asshole. Look who the most recognizable figures are in either political party. And no, I'm not trying to both sides this. Don't send me hate emails. But what I'm saying is, who are the most recognizable people in both parties in the House? They're the people who are the most aggressive, not the smartest. And in fact, a couple of these people from people I know who work in D.C., Republicans and Democrats will tell you that some of the people that are most well known are dumber than a box of rocks. No, I'm not going to name names. I will say that what I'm talking about includes 2 Republicans, and it was a Republican who told me this, and 1 Democrat, that they're just not particularly bright people. But they're super popular. They are over. Why? Because they're aggressively always instigating the other side. And you don't even need me to name names to know some of the people I'm talking about. They may not necessarily be on that, dolts list I was just talking about, but point is, they raise a shit ton of money for themselves. They are in demand on television all the time. When they stream or when they have public appearances, they're like celebrities, and that's attractive. That's intoxicating, man. You don't think, and I'll name one on each side, and I'll name these 2 because neither of them were actually on the so-called idiots list. You don't think that AOC or Paul Gosar, who is actually one of the ones that was under investigation for January 6th on the Republican side, you don't think they like the attention they get? That they are celebrities within their own party, that they're constantly asked to come speak to interest groups within their ideological band or even party groups. I guarantee you when the Democratic convention comes around, if AOC goes, she's going to be a hot ticket. People are going to want to hang out with her. People are going to want to get their pictures taken with her and take selfies and whatnot. And on the Republican side, same thing. For a guy like Gosar, he is, for the kind of rightward fringe of the Republican Party, he is a straight-up celebrity. Funny thing is, having said they weren't on the idiots list, helps you narrow down who actually is, now that I think about it. I shouldn't be betraying confidences like this. But point is, even my own congresswoman, Maxine Waters, is probably best known for her, during congressional hearings, on the floor of the Congress, on television, absolute bashing of Republicans. She was very vocal during the Trump administration. That's probably what she's known for more than anything else. And she's been in Congress since I was in high school. She's been there 35 years. And so at the end of the day, in the modern era where those things are currency, where those things matter, hell yes, these people, these individuals, want to become that kind of celebrity level member within their own party. You're not going to get that way by saying, golly, everyone working here is just doing the best they can for the American people, and I have so much respect for my colleagues on the other side, golly. No, that's not going to get you, on the best podcasts, on cable television. It's not going to make you go viral. Saying, as Newt Gingrich, who was an early purveyor of this back in the 1990s, saying Democrats are the enemy of normal people is a way to get there. You don't need me to tell you that as regard to politicians. Look at who the celebrities are in media. It's not the thoughtful people who can reasonably discuss policy and content. It's the frickin' Matt Walshes of the world. Now, I don't mind speaking ill of him. I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire. But, having said that, he's a celebrity. Way more than I am. And the fact I don't care for him doesn't mean a damn thing, because there are a lot of people who follow his every word. Well, he used to be just like kind of a mid-level YouTuber guy. The more extreme his rhetoric got, the more attention he got. Ben Shapiro, same thing. Now, Shapiro is not Matt Walsh. Do not get me wrong. Shapiro is much less a verbal extremist. Not that he's a moderate by any stretch of the imagination, but Walsh is incendiary by, business plan. Shapiro's not. But notice, if you followed his career at all, and we happen to go to the same college, so I've been kind of kept one eye on him his entire career, he has gotten more stark in his rhetoric as time's gone on. Why? Because that's the business model. That's where the attention goes. He probably, if you go back to his earliest YouTubes or his early radio career, it's not a night and day difference, but it's a marked difference. Well, Congress is the same way. It's where the attention is. And why is that? Because we talk about polarized environment. What do we mean by that? What we mean is now people tend to really self-select their media consumption. Used to be you watched the news at night, whether it was ABC, CBS, NBC, and you got whatever news was delivered to you. Now you don't have to do that. You could go just to the podcasts that will reinforce what you want to hear. You can go to the websites that will only reinforce what you want to hear. You can go to the cable channels or the cable news personalities. You know, if you're left, you'll go to so-and-so. Rachel Maddow was, for 15 years, was the go-to source. I don't honestly know if she still is now because, honestly, I don't watch much more than sports on TV. So anyhow, point is, at the end of the day, oh, we got barking dogs. Be right back. Okay, it appears the dogs have been quelled for the moment. Anyways, now that you have this self-selected media environment where people will only watch what they want to watch and read what they want to read, that pays a dividend to play to that base, to play to the edge of your ideological band, not play to a centrist audience that will be the more generalized audience on ABC News, CBS News, whatever. Okay, that's why this norm is effectively gone, because those kind of the reward structure for being a centrist or being institutionally loyal is effectively gone. The second norm is not dead, but it's in trouble, and that is a norm called reciprocity. So members of Congress have a math problem in their pursuit of public policy, and that's that a lot of the funding, a good percentage of the funding they need for the projects that they want for back home are going to be part of a federal budget where you need 218 members of the House and you're going to need 50 senators. So one of the long-standing unwritten rules, the rule of reciprocity, there is a great song in the musical Chicago about reciprocity. If You're Good to Mama, it's one of the classics of the realm of musical theater, is that members of Congress are expected to support the spending priorities of their colleagues. Because reciprocity. I'll vote for your stuff, you vote for mine. Because we can't. Look, if every spending bill only was voted on by the people who had a but a regional benefit from that legislation, virtually no spending legislation would pass at all. Because something that's beneficial to California, say funding for the film industry, isn't going to do a whole hell of a lot for Alabama. Likewise, a bailout for sugar farmers, people who make and process sugar, is fantastic for farmers in Louisiana and in Florida, but it's not going to do a whole lot for the people living in the Dakotas. So one of the informal norms is reciprocity. I'll vote for what you think are priorities. In other words, I'm going to trust you when you say that this is a priority for your state, for your district, for your community. And in return, you're going to trust me when I say the same. That way we will all get what we need out of the federal budget to represent and benefit the people who live back home, and it'll help all of us stay in our jobs. Because one of the things that voters do look for, talked about it when we talked about pork barrel spending a while back, is they do expect their members of Congress to bring home some of that federal budget. We all pay taxes. And it's sort of an annoying pursuit, but if there's a standing belief that I get back what I put into it, or I get back at least a significant percentage of what I put into it, then it's worth it. But if I feel like all I'm doing is paying taxes to benefit other people, well, that's going to obviously create political problems for my representatives. So one nickname for this kind of budget reciprocity is log rolling. If you've ever seen log rolling on TV, and it's not on TV as much anymore, ESPN used to have something called the Great Outdoor Games, and it was actually one of the events. Log rolling is the ability to stand on a log in water and run in opposite directions, and if you can match the speed and the cadence of your partner, you won't fall off. You will keep going. You're going in opposite directions, but by cooperating with one another, you can stay on the log. So budget reciprocity is basically an unspoken agreement. Members will not deny their vote on budget items. In theory, that should be easy because the budget is generally voted on as one large document, or if we're being exactly proper and accurate, about 15 separate spending items. In other words, not every single policy is voted on separately in the federal budget. There's the bill for the agriculture department. There's the bill for the Department of Energy, and so forth and so on. It's the federal budget's a collection of about a little more than a dozen what they call appropriations bills. Now, as I was saying, this too has taken a bit of a beating, and the main reason is partisanship. Budgets tend to break along party lines, but especially in committee, you will see the party that's in the majority kind of kneecapping the party that's in the minority on their spending priorities, where it used to be reciprocity. I'll take care of you, you take care of me. Now the budget's become a bit of warfare. And that's kind of in the increased partisanship of the modern Congress. That has been one of the byproducts, unfortunately, because it does make the budgetary process a lot messier. And in fact, a lot of budgets are struggle to be passed because, especially in an environment like you have today, you have a Democratic majority Senate, you have a Republican majority House. Well, we know the House starts the process because all tax bills and the appropriations process typically begin in the House. Taxing does by constitutional rule. But they're obviously going to have slightly different priorities because, of course, the Republicans are majority in one, the Democrats are majority in the other, and they have trouble agreeing because the Republicans are busy trying to deny Democrats wins on the budget in the House because they don't want the Democrats to win control of the House. So they don't want vulnerable Democratic members of Congress to get wins in the budget. Okay, that makes sense. Well, in the Senate, same thing's going to happen. So all of a sudden, it's very difficult to create a federal budget. Another reason why reciprocity is taking a beating, a far smaller reason than partisanship. Partisanship is like 90% of the reason, but about 10% of it is now we can access the votes of our representatives on the internet. So you put congressmen in the uncomfortable position of explaining votes, spending votes that on the surface don't make a lot of sense. Gee, Congressman Lou, you're from Southern California. Why are you authorizing billions of dollars to go to farmers in the Midwest? That will do no benefit to your constituents. Now, Ted Lieu's a smart guy. He could probably explain, well, a lot of our priorities here, whether it's defense spending on things like satellite technology and things like that, things that are built, things that are designed here in Southern California, aren't going to happen unless the Farm Belt members of Congress know they're being taken care of too. He can explain the process of reciprocity, but it's a tougher political lift. All right, we've saved the last for last, and that is the norm of specialization. Because of the unique nature of Congress, this one's going nowhere. So the example I always give when I talk about the norm of specialization is, what if I said we're going to have a test next week? On that test, we're going to have government. Duh. But we're also going to have economics. And we're also going to have world history and U.S. history and psychology and geography and intro to law. But what the hell? Let's not limit it just to the world of social studies. Let's also do English literature, American literature, language, mythology, vocabulary, reading comprehension. We can't leave math out, although believe me, if it were up to me, but we can't leave it out. So we're going to have algebra and geometry and trigonometry and statistics and pre-calculus and calculus, although someone will have to do the answer key for me on that one. And then we'll throw in biology, chemistry, physical science, earth science, environmental science, Spanish, French, Mandarin, and what the hell, while we're at it, let's throw in, just because I'm feeling a little froggy, health and the rules of badminton. How would you do on that test? Not good. Well, your Congress isn't that much different from you. Ted Lieu's a smart guy. I'm going to guess that Ted Lieu is not an expert on foreign policy. Why? Because he grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So he grew up in the Midwest, but he grew up in a city. That's why he may be the only person in the South Bay that's a Cleveland Browns fan. But his life is, he's been a lawyer. He's a military lawyer, to be exact. And then he became a private lawyer, and then he became a politician. Probably has not spent a lot of time on the farm, old Ted Lieu. And that's okay. I mean, Farmer Ted would be fun, but it's not a requirement. It's not a part of his identity, and that's okay. But he's going to have to vote on those things. So to independently cast informed votes, a member of Congress is going to have to be knowledgeable about 25 to 30 different areas of policy all at once. And that's not going to happen. That's not very realistic, even for highly intelligent people. And as we talked about earlier, there are some people in Congress that are dumber than that piece of furniture I'm looking at right now. So if you know that, then this norm has to exist. So what is the norm of specialization? And we finish with this because it leads us to the next thing, which is to discuss congressional committees. According to the informal norm of specialization, members of Congress are not expected to become experts on every area of public policy, because they can't. It would be like taking the exam I gave at the beginning of this norm. But the things in which you sit on committee, because you're only going to sit on between 1 to 3 of them in most cases. There's very rare cases where someone's denied committee assignments altogether, and there are equally rare circumstances where someone gets thrown onto 4. But 1 to 3 is 99+% of the cases. Well, on those 1 to 3 committees, you got to become an expert. So it narrows the content expertise of a member of Congress, much in the way that we narrow the content expertise we expect of you of students, right? You're a senior, so you're taking government right now. You're taking an English class of some description, whether it's AP English or it's a seminar. You may still be taking a math class, but it's just one. It's calculus or it's financial algebra or what have you. You may be taking a Spanish class, a science class, but it's just one. You're taking AP Physics, or you're taking environmental science, or whatever. You're taking a language, maybe, but it's just one. It's Spanish, or it's French, or it's Mandarin, or it's ASL. Left out ASL. My bad. Shout out to the ASL community. At any rate, point is that at the end of the day, you are going from however many subjects you could theoretically learn at Maricosta High School, which is probably about 25 to 30, maybe more, down to 6. 7 at the absolute most, and that's almost nobody. And even if you have 7 classes, there's usually some in there that are not study and tests and whatnot. You know, your sport, or your maybe you're in ASB, or maybe you're in a music class of some description, where you still have to be knowledgeable in the content, and it could be more work than your academic classes, but it's not an academic class that was chosen to be bestowed upon you. It's a talent class, not a I have to learn this new thing and study it class that I don't have any talent for or prior knowledge of. So those are a little different. Well, Congress is the same way. Experts on the things they send on committee. So Ted Lieu does not need to know everything about everything, but if he is on the Space and Science Committee, he needs to become an expert on space and science policy. If he's on the Judiciary Committee, he needs to know the issues that are going to be before the Judiciary Committee in any given year. If you are the congressman from Western Iowa, who's a guy by the name of Randy Feenstra, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that he's probably on the Ag Committee, I don't have the committee assignments in front of me right now, then yeah, he needs to be an expert on agriculture matters, but he doesn't need to know about Native American affairs, because there's not many Native American installations in his district. He can lean on colleagues of his who are on that committee. And so that's the second part of the specialization norm. You are then expected to be a source of information for your colleagues on matters that sit in your committee. So there's another example, to use the word we used earlier in the notes, of reciprocity. So if I am a representative from Southern California and I am on the education, workplace, and I can't remember the third part of that committee. The committee dealing with education changes names, it feels like, every month. Then when an education bill comes before the House, I should know everything about it because I'm sitting on the committee. So I might go to my friend who is on the agriculture committee and say, okay, hey, here are the things you need to know. Sorry, dog again. One of these days I'll figure out how to backtrack and edit dog out, but I don't know how to do that yet. Anyway, she was quite mad. So if I'm on education bill comes up, my colleagues who I have some ideological commonality with will come to me and say, tell me about the education bill. And since I'm an expert on that, I will come to them. And I will say to them, hey, here's what you need to know. Now, when the agriculture bill comes up and I know nothing about farm policy, I'm going to go to my ideological friends in the agriculture committee. That's specialization, which is why committees are so very important. That's why they're our next topic when we come back around to the next part of our unit on Congress.